Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of the Virtual Wellbeing Festival. And today's session is Chime Out, and we're going to have a look at the model Chime Out to help with life's difficulties. The session will start shortly, but just to note that your mics are disabled at this time, but your cameras are enabled. So the mics are disabled to ensure that we reduce feedback when you come into the room, because we are recording the session. And just to introduce myself, my name is Sasha Flanagan, and I'm a development facilitator working with learning and development. And I'm going to be facilitating the session today. And then also my colleague Dawn is going to be supporting in the background. And Dawn will be on hand to manage your comments and observations in the chat. So when it comes around later to quick Q&A time, then Dawn will talk to us about what's in the chat. Okay. Just again to remind people that where possible, please leave your cameras on so the presenters can see and interact with colleagues, and their mics are muted to reduce any background noise for recordings, but they will be enabled for the Q&A session. And if you wish to ask a question at the allocated Q&A section, please use the raise your hand function, or just drop your questions in the chat and Dawn will pick those up later. And this session is being recorded for our colleagues to catch up on later on. And I think the links will be dropped again in the chat later on once the recording has been finished. And the audio transcription is available for our hard of hearing colleagues, and that's available in the 3 dots at the top of the toolbar in MS Teams. But please use the chat function for all comments and questions throughout the session, and please remain respectful and kind to our colleagues at all times. Okay, so we're going to just going to introduce then our speakers today. So we have Claire, Marriott, we have Emilio, Shannon and Grace that are joining us today and that are talking to us about Chime Out. Okay, so I'll stop sharing my slides.
Great, thanks. I'm just going to share ours, so do let me know if you're able to see them. There we go. Is that sharing?
Yep, they've come up for me, Grace. Perfect. Brilliant. Thank you.
Perfect.
So thanks, Sasha, for that introduction. So as mentioned, we're going to be talking about CHIME, which is a model that we use in the Community Recovery Team in NHFT to help people with severe and enduring mental health problems to overcome their difficulties. And we're going to be talking about how you can apply that yourselves to any challenges you might be facing. So throughout the session, we would ask that, this is a really interactive session. We're using Slido. So, we'll be putting up the link for that in the chat. And we also would be great if people put any comments in the chat that they'd like to. And as mentioned earlier, we've got a Q&A session at the end. So on to what CHIME is. So in recent years, there's become a bit of an interest in what helps people to overcome significant difficulties like mental health problems. And people have been looking at recovery models. And in 2011, Leamy et al. Looked at over 80 papers that were on recovery and drew together the different themes and ideas that come from those papers and developed the CHIME model. And in the CHIME model, there's 5 different areas. So there's connectedness, there's hope and optimism about the future, there's identity, meaning, and empowerment. And over the course of today, we'll be going into each of those 5 areas. So unfortunately, life is full of twists and turns. There's great times and happy times, but there's also challenges that we all face. And what we are focusing on today is how you can use CHIME to overcome some of those challenges. So what we'd like you to do initially is just to think about some challenges you might have faced in your life and sort of bear those in mind while we're going through the slides. So some examples might include moving house, a new job, a significant period of illness, losing a loved one, going through exams, having COVID. You know, they're things that we just want you to kind of think about as we're talking. So we're now going to be moving on to the different areas. So I'm going to be passing over to Emilio to be talking about connectedness.
Hello everyone, I'm Emilio and we are going to have a little chat about connectedness. So I haven't used Slido before, so good luck with this, but just a little brainstorm of what comes to everyone's mind when we think of connectedness, if you'd be so kind.
Just to say, I think I popped the link to the Slido in the chat, if that helps, or someone else has done it as well. So, or you can join by typing that code or scanning the QR code.
Friends and family is a big one, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, feeling, being heard. Well, that's a nice layout there, like that. Yeah, these are all really appropriate for what we're going to be talking about.
So just to Amelia, since you haven't used it before, the popular ones that people are submitting several times will show up bigger. So those ones, together and belonging, are really key
Popular
words there.
answers, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Trusted relationships, I can see on there. That's also a very big one. So in essence, this is a very brief summary of what connectedness as part of our model means. So having meaningful and healthy relationships with others, being supported and supporting others, being part of a community, feeling connected to the self and feeling connected to the environment. So I'll just read this out. On an individual level, our connections help us to cope more effectively with stress, anxiety, and depression. They make us more likely to make healthy choices, such as eating healthily or exercising more, and have been linked to improved sleep, well-being, and quality of life. Research has suggested that our connections may even help prevent serious illnesses, such as heart disease, stroke, and dementia. So not only is there evidence for a mental health improvement with good connections, there's also a lot of evidence to suggest that it can help with our physical health as well. But on a wider level, a sense of connection within our communities, e.g. neighbours, religious groups, parent associations, etc., can foster trust and resilience. Community belonging and inclusivity helps the overall well-being, health and safety of people in them. So this is a really, really big and important thing for people going through recovery and everyone in wider areas of life. So when we're going through tough times, it can be hard to know who or what to turn to. We might feel disconnected from our community or from the world around us. Sometimes we might even withdraw and not want to go out. So when we asked you earlier to think about trying times in your life and significant events, try and think about what you drew from your connections in that time. So if we think about a generic example of moving somewhere new, that can sometimes have a negative effect on our connections, as you might not be seeing the same people that you were seeing before you moved as often. You might move away from family and friends, and therefore you're a bit more isolated than you were before. And that's an example of how this might affect you negatively. We should think about how we can improve that. So for example, if I give a personal example, one thing that I would go to straight away is I play golf. So I'm a member of a golf club. And that, for me, is sort of an instant way of building connections, because you turn up and you play with new people and you meet new people. So one of my first port of calls, if I move to a new area, would be, you know, where's the local golf course? How much is it to join? And that's me sort of trying to expand my local connections within the new area. But within that, it's also very important for me, certainly, and I think for everyone else, to carry on having the connections that you had in the previous area. So it's finding that balance between building new ones as well. So another little Slido here. How could we strengthen our sense of connectedness, building on the brief examples that I've given there? You know, what can we do to feel more connected? How can we remind ourselves of positive connections? How can we connect with others? How can we connect with our environment? Yeah, faith, volunteering, communication, hobbies, that goes in with what I said. Brilliant. Okay. Step out of your comfort zone. Sometimes that really helps. Could probably take a leaf out of that book. I should probably do that more often, really. But prioritizing time for social opportunities, yeah. And sometimes that can, you know, be stepping out of people's comfort zones in itself. Okay, so if we just go for some examples that we've got already. So we've got reflect on your connections and whether they're positive and negative. And that's a big one, because I'm sure many of you watching today and in times of your life will have a moment where you consider whether, you know, a friend or potentially a family member or a connection in general can be a negative one. And you have to make a decision on whether or not you want to invest time and effort into that connection, whether it will be a positive influence or a negative influence. In doing so, you're maximising positive connections and minimising the negative ones. Sharing your troubles and triumphs with people you trust. Identify and take opportunities to connect with others. Enhance your home environment so that it makes you feel safe, at peace and connected to it. And explore connections to your community, taking regular walks, get to know your local area and resources, meet your neighbours and join local groups. So if we go back to our generic example of moving to a new area, I've given an example of the golf club, but a big one for connecting with your environment and almost sort of killing two birds with one stone is taking those regular walks, because not only are you connecting with, you know, your environment and nature around you, you're also exploring and getting to know the new area, and in doing so you're becoming more connected to it. There's also, you know, as much as I hate to admit it, there's more to life than golf as well. So there's other local groups and clubs you can join. Like I know in Northamptonshire, there's numerous organisations that put on sort of men's mental health group, women's mental health groups, you know. So there's all these places where you've got opportunities to meet new people. I mean, you could even go as far as saying finding a local pub and just go into there, you know, you can meet people in there, and that's as simple as it can get for connections, really. So that's a brief summary of what we do with connections, and I think Grace is now going to talk to you about hope.
Yeah, thank you, Emilio. It's really nice to see all those ideas popping up on the screen. I like that there were some really practical ones about going out and trying new things, but also some more vulnerable ones about being open and honest with people and being more vulnerable. So that's really nice to see. The second part of our model is hope, and we found this to be a really key one with people that we work with, but also in our own lives. It's quite the driver, the motivator. So we'll start off by doing another one of those Slidos. What comes to mind for you all when you think about hope? What does hope mean to you? Future, yeah, having a sense of purpose. Future's a popular one. Yeah, that things will be okay. I really like that. And having positive plans for the future, something to look forward to. Yeah, I think hope is quite future orientated. It's what we want, what is going to happen, or what we want to happen or hope to happen. Success in all caps. Someone here hopes for success. Maybe that's Emilio hoping for success on the golf field. Track? What do you play on in golf? Course, that's the one. I'm going to go with field. I think it's more sports-like. Aspirations, yeah, something to hold on to, that we don't have to be stuck where we are, yeah, that we're movable, that we can make changes, that we can work towards something. If I can find my mouse, I'll move on. So yeah, our model of hope, or the CHIME model of hope, includes things like believing the fact that things will get better, or things will change, or that progress can be made. It's also about having the motivation to change, a reason to, having hope-inspiring relationships. So going back to those connections, who fills me up and who makes me want to do things or makes me want to change for the better. Thinking positively and having hope for the future, and having dreams, goals, or aspirations, so something to work towards. And we found this to be kind of really important in our work, but also in our own lives. So throughout research and also our own experiences, we know that hope is something that motivates us. This helps us to cope in the face of difficult times and challenges. It gives us a reason to keep going. And also just through research, it's linked to lower levels of depression and loneliness, and suicide. And then conversely, it's linked to all those positive things. So more hope is linked to positive emotions and feeling better about ourselves, and also having stronger relationships with other people because we want to connect with them. We feel hopeful about those relationships. And then similarly to connections, it's not only linked to our mental health, but our physical health too. It's actually found that hopeful people are more likely to live longer. So that might just be hope itself, or it might be that hope motivates us to engage in health behaviours like eating well, or exercising, or going to the gym when you really don't want to. And also just going out and meeting people and connecting with other people and feeling more positively. So it's also linked to fewer numbers of chronic illnesses and less problems with sleep as well. And I liked this quote by Bernard Williams. I think he's an English philosopher, but he said there was never a night or a problem that could defeat sunrise or hope. And I think that's really true, in the sense that hope is something that gets us through, even when we're facing difficult challenges. If we have a little bit of hope, we kind of harbour that and keep it safe and can motivate us to get through. So we know that hope is important, and we also know that hope can suffer during difficult times. We can feel a bit downtrodden or demotivated. So thinking back to your own example that we've asked you to keep in mind, how hopeful were you feeling in that time, and what did you hope for? I think when talking to Shannon, actually, she's going to be presenting later about hope. In the past, we've talked about hoping for big things and for little things. So it might be that, yeah, I hope I get this job, or I hope I move to that place, or I hope for this. But it might also be, I hope the bus is on time today, or I hope Sainsbury's has those like chili chicken wraps I really like for lunch. It can be all of these little hopes that just kind of get us through the next hour or the next 5 minutes of our day. So one example of hope or losing our hope that we came up with was about preparing a lot for something and then it's still not going your way. So I don't know if anyone here can relate to this, but I can. But studying a lot for an exam and then it not going well, or maybe even failing an exam. And that can be a key example because we put all of our time and energy and effort into something. We put our hopes towards something, and then it didn't work out as we planned, whether it was, you know, the way the wind blowed that day, or we forgot everything that was on the exam, or we didn't study the bit that came up. But hope is actually what gets us through it. It's like, okay, I can just take the exam again, or I can find another way to study, or I can find another path to get to where I want that doesn't require this exam. And I think the other lesson from that is to not pin all our hopes on one big thing. It's to have those little hopes, those little bits and pieces that keep getting us through. So I'm talking a lot, so I'm going to hand it back to you guys and ask for your ideas on how we can strengthen our sense of hope. What can we do to make us feel more hopeful or feel more connected to our hopes? I like seeing the people typing at the top. That makes me feel like I'm not just waiting, talking to nobody. Yeah, talking about these with others, finding connections. Yeah, those hope-inspiring relationships. Something we talk about in our team is that often we talk about a patient's hope, but we also talk about whether we have hope for them, whether we feel hopeful about where they can go. And the same with day-to-day lives. I have hopes for other people in my life, and I hope they have hope for me. Golf track, new sport. Okay, I know that was Amelia, that one. Making small steps towards our future goals. Yeah, thinking about how we can get there. Mentoring or coaching, that's a really good one. Finding someone else that can help us, or helping other people with it. Acknowledgement. Can I ask for more on acknowledgement? Acknowledgement of hopes, or being acknowledged. Practicing gratitude. Yeah, that's a nice one. Visualization. Yeah, thinking about our goals and where we want to be and where we go. Inspiring stories. Yeah, just like Emilio's golf story. I feel very inspired. I don't know about you guys, but I'm glad that he's making new friends. Putting plans for a holiday. That's my hope. That's mine too. Yeah, having fun, taking the first step. It's about, making movements towards something, not making giant leaps. Social media breaks. That's an interesting one. There are things in our life that can drain our hope. And sometimes social media can do that, or, negative experiences can do that. Okay, I think people might still be able to submit answers if I move on, but I'm just, for time's sake, going to run through our ideas on how we can strengthen hope. So the first one that several people came up with is about identifying goals. And I've put in brackets SMART goals. I'm not shouting the word SMART at you. It's an acronym that people use to build goals. I think it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-centered. It's that we can have these. If we can create a goal that is these things, it can be a bit more achievable. It can feel a bit more achievable. So if that's something that you might find difficult or you worry about, definitely look into SMART goals, or try and set yourself SMART goals, as well as a plan to meet these. And in this plan, thinking about what challenges we might face when trying to achieve that goal. If I don't do well in exams, if I'm not great at studying, how can I overcome that? How can I study in a different way, or find a different route to where I want to go? So reflect on times you overcame in the past and how you can do it again. And similarly with reframing difficulties, it's an opportunity for personal growth. At the end of the day, we've all worked hard because we've all got to this point and we're still here. We've been through different difficulties in the past and managed to overcome them. So how did we do it? And I know that I can do it again. Thinking about what your hopes for the future are, surrounding yourself with people who believe in you and have a positive outlook. So those really core hope-inspiring relationships, as well as using positive self-talk. So those are your kind of mantras in the mirror in the morning. I can do this. I am beautiful. I'm amazing. I'm great at golf. Sorry, I'm just hacking into Amelia's ones. But those kinds of sentences, just throughout our day, knowing that we can do something. So I think that leads us into identity. So I'm going to hand back to Amelia to talk us through that one.
Hello again. Yeah, identity. So that is the I in CHIME. So What comes to our mind when we think of identity then? Another Slido for the group. Sense of self. Nailed it right there, first time out. I find personally, when working with the clients that we work with, this is often quite a difficult one to address, because a lot of people, particularly with a mental illness, can sort of feel like their identity sort of been taken away from them and marred by the mental illness, certainly the diagnosis as well. So for me, this is a challenging subject to approach with the people that we work with personally. Yeah, all really good there. I like the song as well. Someone's got a sense of humour in the chat, which is nice. True self, yeah. So if we go for what we've got down, we've got knowing who we are and what we want. Really, really important. And again, like I said previously, it can be very challenging to establish that with some people who have gone through a period of poor mental health. Having a sense of individuality, rebuilding your identity. Again, sometimes we can feel like we're lost with our identity and we don't know who we are. Again, we'll give examples of that later on. Having a positive self-identity and overcoming stigma. Again, with people with poor mental health, you know, sometimes when you see people in the news with schizophrenia, it can be quite a jarring thing to read, especially if you have it yourself. You know, you think of people who are in the news with a mental illness, more often than not, it's a negative thing. You know, it will say stuff like crazed or deranged and stuff like that. And if you have that illness and you read that in the paper, you know, it's very tough to get out of that mindset. You know, you're thinking, oh, you know, that's what I'm like as well. Again, really, really challenging to help people with that. So another thing we've got here is, why is this important? So when we have a clear personal identity, we often have healthy self-esteem, which is linked to positive self-worth, self-acceptance and confidence. Conversely, having a negative identity or low self-esteem is linked to self-loathing, self-analysis and rejection. A strong sense of self also means we better understand ourselves, helping us to trust our own abilities and judgment. This helps with facing challenges, accomplishing goals, and enforcing our boundaries. What I personally find with the CHIME model as a whole is there's a lot of links between the different sections. So if we think about enforcing our boundaries, it goes back to connections and those positive and negative influences on you. If you have a strong sense of self, it's a bit of a mouthful for me, I apologise. But if we have a strong sense of self, you know, it's going to be easy to minimize those negative connections, because we're not going to feel the need to change ourselves for others, because we know who we are and what we want, and we know the type of people we want in our life. Again, can be a lot more challenging for some people than it is for others. Additionally, finding a common identity with others can strengthen our social connection and in turn influence our behaviours and attitudes. So thinking about friendship groups, you know, a lot of people with friendship groups sort of feel really, really good about themselves, because essentially what a friendship group is doing for you is reaffirming to you that other people think essentially that you're all right and they want to spend time with you, you know. So it can be a really powerful thing, that. So again, going back to what I said before about a loss of identity, it can suffer when going through difficult times. So again, if I think of a personal example, I'm happy to share this with you all. So I've recently lost my grandmother, and for a long time, probably for about 10 years, my mum sort of looked after and took care of her. So when my grandmother passed away, my mum really struggled, because part of her identity was looking after her and being a carer for her. So it's really difficult when that ends, because all of a sudden a big part of your life and your identity goes away. And I suppose it's really difficult for, you know, not just people in that situation, but losing a part of your identity, sort of, it's a really, really big thing. So in your own example that we asked you to think about earlier, how did you look at yourself when you were going through what you were going through? You know, did you think positively about it or negatively? And if you did think negatively, is that an appropriate thing to think about? Did you deal with it well, really, or are you being hard on yourself? Did you feel like you knew yourself? And what did you do to connect with your identity and who you are? So another little audience interaction after some bit heavy stuff there. We'll try and lighten it up. But how can we strengthen our sense of identity? You know, how can we better understand who we are and what we like? How can we feel connected to this even when life makes it very difficult for us? And how can we foster self-confidence and self-esteem? How can we improve the image that we see in the mirror? Yeah, I think out of those 5 that are on there at the moment, I think 4 are on the next slide. So everyone knows what they're on about here. Eat chips. That's not on the next slide, but probably a good idea nonetheless. Self-compassion, yeah. Time with ourselves, yeah. Yeah, all very good. If we look at what we've got down, so we've got connect the parts of identity you find meaningful by developing your skills and knowledge, your likes, dislikes, values, roles, and culture. Draw out your life story, where you've come from, what you've faced, and who has influenced you. Build an identity beyond the difficulties you've faced in life. Reflect on who you are to other people. Think about who your ideal self is and how you can work towards this. I think these 2 here are really, really important, because, you know, certainly before I worked in mental health, I would read something like, think about how your ideal self is, and I'd sort of laugh that off. But working with people who are going through poor mental health and seeing how important identity is, I think that's a really good one, to think about who you want to be and sort of strive towards that. And I think that links in with what Grace was talking about hope. And it can be a really big driver to sort of recovery and becoming better, really. Yeah. Experiment, try different activities and looks. I think in today's day and age, that's becoming more and more popular as well. And, you know, it can be really powerful to discover your own identity by doing that, and build confidence by focusing on your strengths and growth. So yeah, that was identity in a nutshell. And I think back to Grace to talk about meaning now.
Yeah, thanks, Emilio. I think you should try experimenting with your looks, actually. What did you think about purple hair?
Watch this space.
Okay. Yeah, so the next part of our CHIME model is about meaning, which is often the most kind of abstract one. So I'm not going to say much. I'm just going to put up our Slido and see what ideas people have. What do you think meaning means? What's the meaning of meaning? There's no wrong answers, by the way. Well, there is, but I won't tell you it's wrong. Yeah, purpose, that's a huge one coming up. Big. Something worthwhile, yeah. Any other ideas? Knowing who you really are, yeah, what is meaningful to you? Spirituality, yeah, that's a big one that we haven't touched on yet, but meaning, getting a spiritual meaning from something, or feeling connected to some kind of sense of spirituality can provide us with meaning. Emotional connection, yeah, faith, an appraisal of what happened. Yeah, what is the meaning of this? What's the meaning of what we've been through? Definitely. Okay. So the model itself describes meaning as having a meaningful life or a sense of purpose. So having your life feel full, or that there's a reason to keep going or to keep working on something. Having a good quality of life. Finding meaning in our experiences. So yeah, an appraisal of what has happened, what have we been through, and why did it happen to us? For roles or activities. So that is, for some people, that's like being a parent is really meaningful to them, or working in mental health is really meaningful to them, or volunteering is really meaningful to them. It's who I am and what I contribute is meaningful to me. And for some, spirituality, yeah, that provides us with a sense of meaning or a reason for things. And what we know is that meaning is actually really important. Again, it's abstract and it's difficult to kind of grasp onto sometimes, but it provides us with a reason to get up in the morning, a reason to kind of do things, or not to do nothing. It's shown to be important for our psychological well-being, and it helps us cope. If we can understand the meaning of what we're going through, or the difficulties that we're facing, or the challenges, then that can help us actually get through them and to take some meaning away from it. I'm going through this because I need to learn something from it, or I'm going to grow from it. It provides us with motivation to work hard and to push through tough times, to work towards our goals. It can also provide us with a sense of control and responsibility. So, if we know that what we're doing is meaningful, or what we're going through is going to have a meaning, then that can make us feel a bit more in control of it, or that we can do something about it. As well as a positive self-image. It's been linked to higher life satisfaction and lower levels of internalized stigma. So feeling better about your life and what you're going through, and feeling less like other people can put labels on you, or can put you into a box. It also promotes active social engagement. So those are things like doing things that we find meaningful, going out with our friends, or volunteering, or meeting people. And then it's kind of a reciprocal relationship. Those social engagements are meaningful. We find that enjoyable, and it means something to us. But we also know that when we go through difficult times, meaning can be one of those ones that is really difficult to find. We can often question why we're going through what we're going through, or why we keep going. And maybe in your own example, you can think about that. What was meaningful to you? Why did you keep going? Or if you're going through something now, what is meaningful to you now? And how did it help you in these times? And these meaningful things can be like understanding the situation, but also the little things that you find meaningful. So the people in your life, or the activities, and things like that. Our own example of this one, we were thinking about loss. So losing a loved one, or a pet, or even just like losing a life that you thought you'd leave, losing a job opportunity, or something similar to that. It can make us kind of reevaluate where we are in life, and why are we doing this, and what does it all mean. Have a bit of an existential crisis, which I don't want to give you in this meeting now, so try not to think about it later. But we have to kind of take stock and think about what it means to us. And for some people, that's connecting to spirituality or faith, and saying that someone else has a reason for this. There is meaning to this. And for some people, it's finding meaning in ourselves, in our daily life. So back to our Slido, thinking about meaning, how can you strengthen your sense of meaning? So how can you find what is meaningful to you? How can you feel connected to that? Thinking back to what provides meaning in your life, what provides you with a purpose. Okay, trying to reduce negative thoughts, yeah, but there's no meaning to those, we can put them away. Yeah, think about your values, your job, what your role is. Hope, yeah, there's meaning in hope. All of these things kind of overlap, and if you're the reason why you're going through things is to learn and grow, that is quite a hopeful thing. It's to work towards those goals. Your relationships are meaningful. Prioritizing me, yeah, I like that one. I'm gonna do that all day, every day. Golf track sport, lovely. Building happiness, yeah, it's meaningful to kind of work towards that and find what makes you happy. Reflection, yeah, understanding the meaning and looking back and being honest, that's a key one. We don't always like to be honest with ourselves, but being honest and trying really to understand something or to pass it on to other people is key. And celebrating small wins, I like that one as well. Let's see what we've got down. So these are the kind of ways that we work with people, but also try and build meaning in our own lives. So looking for meaning in your work, relationships and hobbies, what out of those are meaningful to you, and doing more of those, so feeling more connected to them. Identifying and reducing what pulls you away from a meaningful life. So these are things like the things that drain you or stop you from being able to do what you want to. These things that take your time away from doing something that you find meaningful. But also there's negative relationships. Who's pulling you away from where you want to be or where you want to go? Identifying the meaning of your experiences and trying to understand why something happened. So that's the reflection that I think someone suggested there, looking back on things. Establish a routine or structure. And this is quite a practical way of finding a reason to get out of bed every morning. It's okay, I've got to get out because I've got to get to work, or I've got to do this, or I've got these jobs to do today. And set meaningful goals that provide us with motivation as well. So I'm going to hand over to Shannon now, who's going to talk us through the next part of the model.
Hiya, I'm Shannon. So I'm going to talk about empowerment, which is the last section of CHIME. So when we're thinking about empowerment, it can feel quite overwhelming. When you're sort of bogged down in everyday life, it can be difficult to feel empowered or notice the small things that actually do empower you, because you can be too busy just getting on with everyday tasks that it just mellows down and you don't recognise it. And it's really important actually to recognise them small moments that do empower you and that do make you feel better. So we're going to jump into another Slido, which is what comes to mind when you think of empowerment. Strength, yeah, definitely. Control's a massive one, I think. I did it, definitely. Being realistic is really important as well, I think, because if you try and over-egg it, then sometimes you can feel let down or disappointed, and actually that negatively affects your sense of empowerment. Having a voice, yeah, it's really important. Ownership, yeah, taking accountability, taking responsibility. Being heard, I think that's very important. I think that's very important across all five. I think that's come up, so yeah. Entitled in a good way, I like that. Yeah, I think they're all really important and really good examples. So when we're thinking about empowerment, part of the CHIME model, it includes taking personal responsibility, having control over your life, doing things that empower you, and focusing on your strengths. So if you think about having control over your life, it's about having control over your sense of self, who you are, so it links strongly into identity as well, and sort of then positive self-affirmations of I am in charge, this is my choice, I can be what I want, I can do what I want, and the empowerment that kind of comes from that. Although it can be really, really difficult to have that empowerment and that control if you are in a situation where control's been taken away from you for a large part of your life or most of your life. It can be really difficult to draw back from that and take ownership and take responsibility, because it's not something that you've been used to doing, and actually it can be quite scary. So it's very small steps into taking them risks, taking them chances, and noticing the benefits of taking control and taking responsibility and how it makes you feel. So empowerment is linked to concepts such as confidence, self-esteem and self-efficacy, as the focus is on our strengths and autonomy. It means we feel in control of things in our lives and make us more likely to make changes for the better. Therefore, like other areas of the CHIME model, research has found a link between empowerment, health behaviours and better physical health. Additionally, empowerment has been linked to reduced emotional exhaustion in the workplace, which has knock-on effects on both our physical, psychological well-being and work performance. So it's important when you're sort of thinking about how it can reduce emotional exhaustion in the workplace. I think if you're feeling good about yourself and feeling good about what you're doing and knowing that you're doing a good job, it can make you feel overall happier, and you feel happier to go into work, you feel happier to wake up every morning, because you know that you're contributing and you're doing a good job. So there's a nice quote here. You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide to be reduced by them, not to be reduced by them. So that's, I think, really important, because we can't control what other people are doing or what other people are saying, and it can bring us down and make us feel a certain way. But actually recognising I can only control what I'm going to do and how I react to that. I can't control what they say or what they do or how they behave. That's their prerogative, but this is what I'm going to do. And that can give you a massive sense of empowerment. So tough times can sometimes make us feel out of control or disempowered, but how we respond to this is something that we can control, which is pretty much what I've just said. So thinking back to your own example from the beginning of the session, did you feel empowered or disempowered by these events? What difference did it make? And what helped you to feel empowered or in control? So physical health problems are a really common example of this. Experiencing difficulties, uncertainty or a tough diagnosis can understandably make us feel quite disempowered. It can make us feel like we have no control over what we're going through and like there is little to do that we can do to change it. In these times, it can help you to focus on your strengths and the things that you can control, whether that be big or small. So sometimes I think instead of thinking about changing the huge event, so say you are suffering with a physical health illness that you can't change, it's thinking about ways to make you feel more comfortable, or ways where you can still have a quality of life whilst living alongside that physical health illness or mental health illness or whatever it may be. Just going to go onto another Slido. So if you could just answer how we can strengthen our sense of empowerment. So it's thinking about things sort of how can we take our control back? How can we connect with what makes us feel empowered? And how can we focus on our strengths? Assertiveness, definitely something that a lot of people struggle with. It's hard to be assertive, but definitely can help. Prioritising ourselves, yeah, I think often we can all think about everybody else and not think about ourselves, and sometimes in small ways you do have to be a little bit selfish and focus on your health and making sure that you are where you need to be before you can help anybody else. Stop doing things for the sole purpose of pleasing others. I think that's really important, because you can actually make yourself quite unhappy if you're constantly just trying to please other people and not doing things that you want to do. Personal boundaries, really important. I think recognising your own personal boundaries as well, and actually identifying what your personal boundaries are. Self-care, definitely. Taking care of yourself, it can make you feel better and in turn helps you feel more empowered. definitely challenging people, again, can be really difficult, not easy for everybody, but questioning why you're doing something or why you're being asked to do something. So ways to build and strengthen empowerment on our side, we've thought about identifying and focusing on your strengths, identify what you are and aren't responsible for, identify choices that are available to you. So again, going back to that sort of realism and what's realistic. Use reflection as a growth exercise rather than self-criticism. Draw strength from what you have overcome and how you overcome it, which I think is really important. Reflection can be really powerful. Connect and identify with role models. Use I statements to take responsibility for emotion and behaviour. I think highlighting that I, me. Recognise when you're avoiding a challenge and make a plan to face it. So that leads us into kind of rounding up the CHIME model as a whole. So thinking about all 5 areas and how they all fit together. So we've just gone through the 5 areas of CHIME, and as you may have noticed, there are times when different areas overlap and influence each other. They all work really well together. What each of the areas mean and include differs from person to person, and which areas people value most also differ. So some people prioritise other sections to what other people would, but that's fine. There's no order. You do it how you sort of go through it in your life, what matters to you and what's important to you. So when we go through challenges, these areas can suffer and it can be difficult to know how to improve things. Using the CHIME model as a guide, we can start to think about how to rebuild and grow.
Brilliant, Shannon. Thank you for that. So just thinking a little bit about how to bring all this together and what you can do to bring CHIME into your life. So there's 4 ways of doing that. So some of these have been touched on as we've been talking. Experimentation. So sometimes we don't know what we like, who we are, who we should spend time with, you know, how we're going to cope in this new situation, having faced the challenges that we have. So sometimes it's about experimenting and allowing ourselves to go along to something or do something that we perhaps wouldn't normally, to find out whether it fits with us, and if it doesn't, to learn from that and think why that might be, and then maybe doing something different. There's times where we might want something in particular in our life. We might know that something's meaningful to us, or we have hopes and goals for the future, but we actually don't have the skills yet to be able to get there. So the next stage is about thinking about what skills you might need and how you might go about getting that. Then making a plan, thinking, you know, really far ahead about how you'd like your life to be using these 5 different areas, and then working on moving towards those goals, that achieving part of it. But this isn't a case of, you know, you've completed it, you've got all the 5 areas of CHIME, life's okay now. It's a constant journey, it's constantly changing. As we go through different challenges and different experiences in our life, we might need to refresh, we might need to go back to experimenting and working through. Just waiting for the next slide, Grace.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were frozen. There you go.
So the slide here is just bringing everything together. It's quite a busy slide, but it just goes over all the 5 different areas of CHIME and things that you might look for. And there's some areas, as you can see, that really overlap. So like in the connections area, you've got having hope-inspiring relationships, and that obviously links with hope as well. And with meaning, you've got being able to make meaning out of your experiences and understand yourself, which reflects on your identity. So all these things pull together but help you to face the challenges that you might be experiencing. Okay, Grace. So we're up to the question slot.
I'm going to stop sharing just so we can all see each other.
So I've just been having a look through the chat box. Not so much questions as such in there, but if anyone has got any questions, please feel free to either pop them in the chat or raise your hand and ask them. But we've had from Louise that Northampton, this was something you were talking about earlier on, Northamptonshire Sport is a great place to start to find sports clubs, park runs, etc. Most counties do have a version of that as well. From our very own Sasha talking about being hopeful, I can relate to this, to pass her maths functional skills. So something you were talking about, I think, Grace. Power posing was something that Robert put forward as a useful tool, as David put forward. Visualization boards are amazing for SMART goals as well. And then the rest of the chat is talking about Emilio's hair.
Yeah, I think actually
Can confirm it's still brown.
I think because we had ideas, spaces to share ideas throughout, it's been really good to see kind of what people find personally relevant and having their own space to think about those. So thanks everyone for sharing their ideas. And I will let the purple hair dye production companies know that there'll be an increase in demand soon.
So we've got booking a holiday as well, which has just popped in from Nicola. So if anyone else has got anything else they would like to have, or any questions they'd like to ask, please raise your hands.
I've seen from Louise, she says, will we be able to have the slides? I'm sure there's a way to send them out. Is that right?
Yeah, we can send them on. Also, the recording, this session's been recorded, so it will be uploaded, so you can watch back if you want to, or share with colleagues.
We also have a worksheet that we tend to use in our work that is just a basic CHIME worksheet. So if you would like that, we can send that out as well, just as a space to brainstorm ideas about the different areas of CHIME.
And that we're just saying that would be really helpful from Louise. Dave has asked a question. Because he can't unmute at the moment. He says, is this something that the mental health first aiders could signpost to?
So the people that come through our team are people who are at risk of being admitted to long-term hospital, so have severe mental health problems. So we wouldn't be able to take referrals, unfortunately, from mental health first aiders, but absolutely the skills that we're talking about from a CHIME perspective would be really helpful for mental health first aiders to be aware of and to be using with the people they're working with.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks for that. So, Louise, over to yourself. Sorry, not Louise, Sasha. Over to you, Sasha. Sorry.
No worries. Okay, thanks, guys. Thank you very much for a very informative session. So, we would like to get your feedback. So, please share your feedback. So, we've got a couple of QR codes there. Please let us know your thoughts about the Virtual Wellbeing Festival and this session. We'd love to have your feedback. It helps us to inform future events moving forward, and then also you can find further resources. There are more activities and resources available for the well-being, for your well-being on the Virtual Wellbeing Festival website. So you just need to go to wellbeingfestival.live and then click the wellbeing activities, or you can scan the QR code just there. Okay, and get social. So we'd love it if that you could share your experiences with us at the Virtual Wellbeing Festival. We have a Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and you just need to tag us in by using hashtag VWBF23. Okay. And if you've been affected by any of the information or experiences shared in this video and you would like to seek support or advice, please consider the following support options. If you'd like to talk to anyone about stress or anxiety, please call the Northamptonshire NHS Talking Therapies team on the number there available. And for anything else, including access to more urgent help or mental health crisis, please call that number there available, or visit the mentalhealthnumber.me. Okay. And thank you. I'd just like to thank you everyone for joining the session today. And we hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to welcoming you to our next sessions available throughout this week. So please do join us. Thank you.
Sorry about that, Sasha. I was looking at the Louise Buckingham's name on the screen and I just read it out.
No worries, no worries. I was just I was more like annoyed at my exiting the exiting the recording. But at least it stopped sharing.
Gary isn't here, he's just had to nip into the office, so is still showing as
I'll
in
kick him
around.
out. Thank you very much.
Kick
That
him
was
out.
brilliant session.
Yeah, really good session.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Yeah,
your
thank you.
support and the question fielding and things.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm sure it will get, I'll let you know like any feedback we get and obviously how many views we get, because like I said, there's a lot of on-demand views, so like once a week or so has gone by, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Louise, I know you have a copy of the slides, but that worksheet I was talking through, is that best to send to you?
Yeah, if you send it to me, what I can do is see if we can upload it onto the website.
Yeah.
That would probably be the best way of doing it. Yeah, ping it over and I'll speak to comms.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
You too.
See you later.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Well done, Sash. Oh,